Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adapt podcast with Danette FM. I'm Jez FM, the podcast producer, and this is sort of an accompaniment podcast to the amazing book, The Adaptable Leader by Danette Fenton-Menzies. And with me, of course, is Danette Fenton-Menzies. So, Danette, how are you going?
Yeah, Jez, having a great week and continue to learn heaps from this podcast. So can't wait to share some of the insights with others from what we learned this week.
Absolutely. And today we have actually the first podcast we recorded. So this is the first interview, and this was with an old friend, Kaylene. So Danette, do you want to tell us a little bit about your conversation with Kaylene and the topic, how failure cultivates resilience?
So I've known Kaylene since Jez was 4.5, 5, so quite some time. And Kaylene's had an amazing career. She was an accountant by trade, worked with me teaching for a number of years, and now is general manager of operations for Tabcorp. And she does a number of massive transformations for that organisation. And so I was really curious on the lessons she's learnt sort of going through transformations, and also about what she learns from failure.
Amazing. Well, shall we just jump into this conversation and we'll
Why
pick it
not?
up afterwards? So everybody enjoy this great conversation between old friends on a great topic. Enjoy the conversation.
All right. Well, do you want to just start by introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about you before we start? And then that can sort of go in the intro.
Oh, cool. Because I'm like, I know that's like odd because I'm like, I know you did that. So I'm Kayelene Snowden. I'm currently General Manager of Operations at Tabcorp. So in my role at Tabcorp, I look after all of the field services team. I look after all of the contact centres. I look after all the on-course technology team from a field service perspective. I look after all the retail venues. So I have a very large workforce. We're a national business. And, you know, I've been at Tabcorp now for eight years. Previous to that, I was at the ACT-TAB. I'm an accountant by trade, but now I've got quite a different remit.
Nice. And Kaylene and I have known each other since our children were very young. So
yes,
I've watched Kaylene's career change so many times. So it's thank you so much for coming on today. And
thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I just figured you were a great person to talk about adaptability and leadership because you've done it a number of times. So let's start with, what do you do that helps you actually adapt?
What I do is I probably pause and think about why the changes occur, or why change is occurring, and try to understand the why. You know, and I think you know, in this day and age, you know, you have to be able to reflect on how things are in their current state, and then what the future state's going to look like, because we are completely evolving it, and we're evolving at pace in business and in the whole world, really. You know, so you need to be able to think ahead. You need to be able to be strategic. You know, and for me personally, how I learn to adapt, if you like, is I do, you know, I pause, I reflect, I think, and I have great people around me. I always make sure I have a great team around me, you know, and I know with them when to lean in, when to lean out, because you have to have that trust within your team. And I think the other big thing for me is about taking accountability, like making change, owning it, making decisions, because you can be in inertia if you don't make decisions.
Great answer. And I was just thinking, there are some leaders that push back about, you know, taking that time to reflect and, you know, just get reset. any advice for them on how they can just create that space a little bit in their workplace to be able to do that?
Like I used to be like that. So I get that. Like, but the thing is, you learn, sometimes you have to go slow to go fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's about, if you don't pause and get yourself right and understand what you want the outcome to be, then how can you lead people to that? You have to own it as a leader, because you're the one that's got to be able to bring people along on the journey. When you're living in a world of change, or you're transforming a business, or you're rolling out new initiatives, you've got to understand it, you've got to be passionate about it. That's the way that you can drive that with your team. So I'd say to people, you've got to learn to, you've got to learn, like that I had to learn. You have to learn to breathe, pause, reflect. Yeah. So go slow to go fast.
Nice. Love that answer. So how do you deal with failure? Because throughout our careers, there's going to be times when things don't work according to plan. How do you deal with that?
I use it as and I know this probably sounds, cliche, but I do use it as a learning. And I think failure builds resilience, and you need a lot of resilience. And so when I've had failures, and yes, we've all had them, even now I'll look back and think, and go, this is what I learned from that, and this is that, and look at how I dealt with it, and it comes back to that self-reflection and taking something out of everything, so you are learning from that failure, what went wrong. I'm a big believer in post-implementation reviews, because I think, and we don't do enough of them, like in business, you don't do enough of them, but unless you take the time to look at what went wrong, how do you then know to ensure it does, and I'm not going to say it doesn't go wrong again, but you can manage and mitigate and put things in place. And if you don't look back and reflect on that, then sometimes you're just going to make the same mistakes again.
So true. Love it. So think of the time where perhaps you had a failure, where if you reflect on it, what would have happened if you hadn't have adapted in that situation?
I think for me, if I hadn't have adapted in that situation, I wouldn't be where I am now. And I suppose there's two elements to that failure, whether it's a commercial failure or a personal failure. When I think about I could be thinking of a personal failure where you haven't had a good relationship in the workplace, or you've had a difficult boss, or those types of situations. If I didn't learn from that, you don't grow, and then you don't know how to deal with those difficult people, because we're always going to have difficult people in our working life. So how do I deal with them going forward? From a commercial sense, like in a transaction or in an outcome-based activity, where you've had a failure, and if I hadn't have learnt from that, I'm very likely to do it again. Do you know what I mean? You learn so much from those mistakes that you make, and sometimes failures are not because you could do everything right and you still have a failure, because there's always things outside your control.
I'm curious, the difficult people, any tips you've got for our listeners around what do you do when you have to deal with difficult people?
At the end of the day, I'm very data driven, so if I'm dealing with difficult people, I try to keep it very factual, very professional, and use that to leverage the outcome I want to get to, if I have to get to an outcome. But difficult people now, like I said, you just learn that resilience. You learn that it's if it's in the workplace, you learn how to manage them, how to limit your exposure to them, if you like, if you have to, if it's that bad. But yourself, at the end of the day, you don't like being around people that bring you down. So in your private life, you don't tend to be around people that are difficult. So in the workplace, I just limit really how much interaction I have with them.
Nice and very wise advice. Love that. So the next question is, what advice would you give to your 25-year-old self about being an adaptable leader?
Well, I would say, like I said to you before, that remember to breathe.
Yep.
Remember to being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like, we live in an environment where things are always changing, like I said. So you've got to get used to being uncomfortable, and embrace it. And sometimes, having that feeling in your stomach when you're not sure or you're uncertain, then, that's okay. Even the most confident people have that, and that's okay. I think the other thing I would say to them is that through change, you learn, right? And so it's like, I'm a big believer in continuous learning. So you either stay still and you don't learn, or you just keep moving forward and you continually learn. And I think you just never know what doors it opens up. What about all the opportunities? So that fear of going, I can't do that, or I don't know what to do there, I think instead of looking at it that way, it's like, okay, no, I'm going to be really calm, but I'm going to paddle really, really hard underneath and make this happen and learn, work out what I've got to do to make it happen. So I think I'd say to them, just back yourself, believe in yourself, take the time to breathe, self-reflect where you have to, but just give everything a shot, because, what's the worst that could happen? You could fail, but you just pick yourself back up and off you go again.
I really like that answer. And it's one thing I've observed with leaders who do adapt is that they don't necessarily have all the answers when they go into it. It's like, okay, I'll back myself and give it a go. And I love that answer. That's just exactly what I observe as well. So, when people are trying to build their confidence, what's the best way, do you reckon, to build their confidence if they're trying to adapt?
It's by doing things. It's doing things, and you do it, and then you go, oh, that wasn't, that wasn't so bad. Or, and learning, reading, exploring, talk to people, put yourself out there. If you don't know something, like you said, it's okay to say, I don't know that. Can you share with me, or can you help me? I was, 8 weeks ago, I knew nothing about contact centers, but now I know a lot about average, hold times and, a whole range of things. So IVR systems. So I think it's like, you just have to think about, it's okay that I don't know, and I'm just going to learn, just continually learn.
And I love that from a role modeling perspective too, because if your leader's willing to go, I don't know, can you help? That obviously it also sends a message to the team about being okay with not knowing and reaching out for help.
Yeah. And I think it's really that other thing, that accountability. It's okay to make a decision and be wrong and say, yep, we got that wrong. Because a lot of things through transformation, when you're transforming, especially in a business, you'll go down one path. And it sometimes takes courage to go when you spent money or whatever, to go, oh, actually, I don't think this was the right decision. I think it's, we need to go this other way. So a lot of people will just keep going down that path because they don't want to go, hey, I don't want to say, that I got this wrong. And for me, that is really about being an adaptable leader, is being able to go, no, actually, we got this wrong. This is a mistake. If we keep doing that, it's not going to get the outcome we need. We need to pivot. We need to move in this other direction, And so I think that's really important, to be able to show to your team that you can do those sort of things, because then that empowers people to make decisions.
I love that, because I've seen a number of projects where, hundreds of millions of dollars get spent and they knew early on it wasn't really going to win. So
yeah. You roll out new ERP systems, or you roll out some system, so I think it's really important that people, embrace that, because everywhere you go, whether in any parts of your life, you have to make a decision and you have to back yourself.
Nice, love that. So we're nearly at the end of this, Kayleen. This has been a nice conversation.
You're being nice and quick.
So When you're thinking about adaptable leaders, is there anything else you'd like to share that our listeners could go, oh, that's a really helpful tip to help them grow in terms of their adaptability?
I think be a disruptor, be curious, just think about all the opportunities that are out there. But I think it's really important that you bring people along on your journey. You need to have their hearts, their hands, and their minds. So it's about bringing them along on the journey with you. You have to understand that you may get there faster than everybody else, and so you can't expect people to be at the same pace at you. And so you need to remember that as well as an adaptable leader. You've got to everybody gets there, and everybody might get there a different way, but that's okay, and I think that's really, really important.
So that actually leads me to another question. To get people on board on that journey, particularly when you're involving heart, what are some of the things that you do to involve the head, the heart, to get them, wherever they are, to come along and join?
But most of the time, it's one of the keys to that message is what's in it for them.
Nice.
Like what's in it for them? Because then if people can understand what they're going to get out of it or how it's going to affect them, and if it's a positive outcome, it's much easier to bring them along on the journey. So the why and bringing people at that start around what's in it for them is so important through change, and when you're leading through that change.
So what if the message is not so good for them?
And that's a challenge. Yeah, and I've been those ones as well, where it's it can be. The one thing, in those difficult situations, I would say as advice is be authentic and be truthful. Like, people deserve your authenticity. They really do. So when it's difficult changes or you're doing difficult challenges within your workplace, people respect you more if you are honest with them and you be authentic around the conversations you have with them.
Anything else you'd like to share for anyone who might be thinking, how do I adapt better?
Well, I think, you think, like, I just go, I've been an accountant, I've been a facilitator, I've taught people, and now, I'm doing operations. I think just remember that life's a journey and have fun, and be curious.
Love it. So what a great interview to start, Kayleen. So thank you.
Oh, no, I don't think it's going to be as, you'll have a lot of smart, articulate people. I'm not very those.
You are both. and where you are proves that. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Wow, what a great conversation. Good to see Kaylene again. I'm 29 for people doing the math, so if you you can see
a few years.
Danette, how did you find that conversation with Kaylene? And any sort of insights from that one?
I loved that conversation. I loved her distinction about failure in terms of whether it was something that she'd contributed to and what she could learn from that, but whether it was something that was external and therefore not to beat herself up around it, but again, just to take the lessons and learn. I really love the fact that she talks about slowing down in order to speed up. So there's times to pause and reflect. And there was one bit which I really enjoyed where she talked about where sometimes we make decisions and we start moving forward on those and it becomes apparent that maybe it's not the right decision. We have a bias that just goes, just keep going. We've had, we've invested so much, let's keep going. But she was willing, and I know other leaders that are adaptable do this really well. They're willing to go, okay, let's stop. Let's review this and maybe let's make another call, and sharing that with the team about why that happened rather than everyone going down the road where everyone's going, this is not going to work. So, that takes courage as a leader, and I really loved that part of the conversation with Kaylene.
Absolutely, yeah. What a great conversation. Well, as always, Danette, we have a listener question. So today's listener question comes from Christine. And Christine asks, I struggle with anxiety and stress. Every time I get a new client, I develop a fear of failure and lose my self-confidence. How can I manage this?
So great question, Christine. And the first thing I'd say is, and we've said this on a number of podcasts, is it's really important to seek help. And so just like if you're sick, you go to see your doctor. Things like anxiety, there are mental health practitioners who can support you to manage your anxiety, to manage your stress. And once you sort of got that going, I think something that really helps is understanding your purpose. So if you can link your purpose with why you're helping your clients, that gives you sort of that certainty and that, I don't know, that calmness and centeredness of why you're doing what you do. And on a previous one, Jez spoke about Simon Sinek and his why video. I'd absolutely say watch that, because understanding your purpose literally can help calm you, because it sort of comes back to your why you do what you do. I think also something that can help you is to know, where your clients currently are at, and take them on the journey of what does the successful future state look like. So you've sort of got indicators of where they think they are now versus where they want to be, because that can help you map what are the gaps between here and there. And I think that's really helpful. And again, Kayleen sort of spoke about when transformation's happening, she pauses and thinks about that current state and what she needs to do to get to the future state. So I think that's actually some really good advice. And we're all human. And so what you're experiencing, that means you care. And so bring it back to I care. And every day just do little reflections about, what did I learn today? What can I tweak for tomorrow in order to be able to navigate and know that you are going to fail sometimes. No one gets it right 100% of the time unless they're not putting any risk in what they're doing at all. So learn from those and be okay if you go one direction, then you go, maybe this needs to change. I think taking Kaylene's advice about being okay to stop, pause, reset, and if need be, change direction to get where you need to go. The other thing I'd say is, can you collaborate and partner more with your clients so you're getting feedback more regularly, so you can tweak it more regularly, so it gives you that calmness as well.
Absolutely. Well, great advice there, Danette. What a great episode. Loved this one. Love seeing Kaylene again. Do you have any final thoughts on today's conversation and what Kaylene said as well?
So I think, I love her message, and I love the fact that really failure is about learning and it's about adjusting and adapting. And I think if we all learn that, then you know what, you become adaptable, because you just go, oh, I learned something new. That's a great way of moving forward.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Danette, and everybody that's been sharing, listening. We really appreciate it. Next week, we've got another awesome episode. But until then, have a magical week.
Thank you, Des.